Hey guys, welcome to another MapleStory bossing video. I haven't done one of these in a while, and I'm also trying to adopt a new script style and commentary where basically all I do is I have bullet points, because before I would usually do word for word verbatim writing on my scripts and I would just read them. But then I think I might try doing it a little bit more live, so if it sounds a little less, I guess, structured, but hopefully maybe it can be a little better because it sounds more casual, I'm not entirely sure. But anyways, let me know in the comment section below what you guys think. I'm reviving the boss guides. I actually never did hard Magnus in terms of my bossing guide before. This is just because I really dislike killing him, since it just took way too long and you also had to wait 15 minutes, but then there was a lot of changes. 5th job update came out, no damage cap, so he's a lot easier to kill now, so I figured this is a good time to make a boss guide. I kind of want to do more for, let's say, I want to do a revised version for the Lotus guide, the Damien guide, you know, the Chaos Through the Abyss guides and Gollux and stuff, because before then, all I did was I just had text on the screen, but this time I want to do it with my commentary, so I hope you guys enjoy. Please be sure to leave a like and also write down a comment as to what boss you want to see next. I'll be taking boss requests, and yeah, let's get right into it. So Magnus, he is the arch nemesis of the, or I guess he would be, I would say he's like the Black Mage's commander representative for Pantheon and the Nova world of Grandis, as opposed to, you know, let's say Hilla or Arcarion being from Maple World. You get the idea. Before we even get into taking on Magnus, let's just focus on our prerequisites or good preparations you want before getting into him. He does have a very long prequest that you have to do. It starts all the way at Hillisium Reclamation HQ and it goes down to the downtown Black Market. There are a bunch of guides out there that you can watch for, you know, how to actually complete the quest. It's not difficult, it just tends to be a little tedious, but it's nothing that you haven't done before. It's a lot shorter than Gollux Prequest in my opinion, and I don't mind doing it too much. I usually just watch a movie or something or watch a video whenever I'm doing it. But it's definitely well worth it because Magnus is a very valuable boss that you can take out every week. Which leads me into my next point. Magnus is considered one of those epic bosses in MapleStory, which means that you can only kill him once a week. Although if you do get the reset ticket from Critias, then you can do him twice a week, and it's actually important to do him twice a week because the drops that he gives can be pretty beneficial, especially for, you know, mid-level players. In terms of how strong you want to be, it's kind of difficult to actually formulate a good benchmark as to what your range should be. It's because mostly the fact that we have node stones now, so technically any range that you needed to be before the 5th job update, it's now cut in half, or maybe less than half because of all the node stones that you have and also the 5th job skills. But I would recommend if you want to solo this boss, depending on what class you are, I would say it's a good idea to have at least about 1 mil range. Probably 1 mil range clean. Yeah, 1 mil range clean sounds like a good idea. And then around, let's see if you can try to get 1.5 mil range buffed. You can go for a little less, but it just means you're gonna have to be a bit better with your mechanics and the boss will take a little longer. The ideal boss damage and PDR you want to have, I say PDR, I know people call it I ignore defense at this point, or IED, I still call it PDR just because I'm used to it. For boss damage, I would say you want to go for at least maybe around 225 to 250, if that's appropriate. And for PDR, I would say about 90%. That's like the general rule that you want to have for most of these beginner epic bosses. I say beginner epic bosses even though these things are actually really tough. It's just that we have the new bosses like Lotus, Damien, and Lucid, and Will coming out. So I guess Chaos Through the Abyss and Hell Gollux and Hard Magnus, they've kind of gone down a little bit. 90% PDR though should be more than enough. Some classes they do have skills that have built-in PDR, so if you do have those classes then you're okay to go maybe 88%, 87%, but perfectly fine. Link skills though. Obviously every link skill pretty useful, but I think the 3 most important ones that you want to take on for bossing are Close Call, which is the Shade link skill, and it has a very small chance of stopping you from dying, which may or may not be reliable, but you never know when it's going to happen. Spirit of Freedom is probably the most useful link skill in the entire game when it comes to bossing. The way it works is it's the resistance is combined link skill, which means the more resistance classes you have, the stronger it is, and it provides you invincibility right upon respawning after dying, up to 8 seconds. And that's really good because it gives you time to recover, quickly get back into the fray without getting like insta-killed over and over. Then finally, Cygnus' Blessing. Although status resistance got nerfed a little bit, they made it so now that instead of you having a chance to avoid getting hit by a status effect altogether, you're guaranteed to get hit by it, but it just has reduced duration, kind of like Tenacity in League of Legends. But it still helps. Magnus does have a few status debuffs on you, such as a stun or a slow, so it can definitely help. Also, a lot of people don't really consider this too much, but I recommend you carry some regenerative familiar like the Mutant Snail in these boss fights because there is a potion cooldown and there are a lot of sources of damage that Magnus has that you simply just cannot avoid. So whatever you have, it all works out, but you don't need too much to take out this boss. He's not one of the super hard endgame bosses, he's just a lot more tricky than he is difficult. Let's get into the actual boss though. When you enter right away, you'll notice that the entire map just starts having a bunch of little like asteroids falling from the sky. These things are like meteor debris and they count as terrain damage. There are 3 colors. There's green, blue, and purple. The green one does 50% of your maximum HP, while blue and purple are 1-hit KOs. Also, users with untargetability skills like Darkseid, you can dodge these attacks, so it can be definitely very helpful if you need to just like retreat for a little bit, but you want to make sure you keep an eye on one specific thing. Apart from the meteor debris, you'll notice that there's this giant blue aura that's around Magnus. I like to call it the friend zone, and so I'm going to keep calling it that. If you're outside of the friend zone, it causes you to take 10% of your maximum HP as dot damage. It's very, very strong, and actually can get very annoying. It can kill you very quickly, so you want to make sure you stay in his friend zone at all times. Additionally, when you're outside of the friend zone, you deal only 10% of your damage to Magnus, and that's to encourage you to get up close and personal to him to get damage, which can also be very dangerous because he has a lot of attacks that throw you outside of the friend zone. And make sure you don't use any healing items like potions or whatever outside the friend zone because it only has 10% effectiveness. You get full effectiveness inside the zone, but outside of the zone it does only 10% effectiveness, so just be careful about that. And the zone shrinks in size depending on Magnus's remaining HP, the less area you have to work with. So let's actually get into Magnus's active attacks. He has quite a few, and a lot of them, like I said, are mostly meant to make it difficult for you to actually deal damage to him, so they're either crowd control or they're just ways to throw you outside of the friend zone. He has a green sword spirit attack where he releases sort of this green projection of himself, and then it causes a whole bunch of swords to rain down from the sky and attack certain zones. Pretty easy to see coming, but sometimes he might put you in a very uncomfortable position where a lot of swords are right next to each other, which means you just have to act out very quickly. Another attack he has is the spiderweb effect. The way it works is that he sort of releases a dark web that slows your movement and it prevents you from using any dashing or blinking skills. So while you're affected by it, you can't flash jump, you can't use any rush or dash attacks, and you can't even teleport. On its own, the skill is not too threatening, but you also have to remember that Magnus has a lot of one-shot attacks that involve you trying to run away from him as quickly as possible, and there are a lot of meteors that fall from the sky, and sometimes those meteors fall very quickly. So this is mostly meant to just prevent you from being able to dodge those attacks, so it sets you up for failure. He has two attacks with the sword. He has a dash and a spin. When he dashes, it's a simple dash. It used to knock you back a long time ago, but now it doesn't because people realized I was way too broken. This attack on its own doesn't do too much damage, but the whole point of it is to get Magnus into a more favorable position, and more importantly, to get you outside of his zone so you continue taking damage and you do less damage. The second sword attack he has, the spin, it causes Magnus to become untargetable for a brief moment, and then after slashing, he knocks nearby enemies back. Keep in mind, this is a knockback attack, which means if you're hit while in the air, you get knocked a considerable distance back, so be very careful when you're seeing this attack. It's pretty easy to see coming, just make sure you get a little bit farther away from him and you should be good to go. Also, he has two charging attacks. They don't have any specific names, so I just called one of them Black Blast and the other one like a sword spike almost. The Black Blast attack, he goes up in the air, he charges for a brief moment. You can tell that he's using Black Blast and Sword Spike based on which animation he has while he's charging. For Black Blast, he's like covering himself with his wings, and then after a moment he blasts the diagonal locations of him in like a cone-like fashion on both sides. The best way to avoid this attack is to stand directly underneath him, or to avoid it just by getting as far away as possible. The reason why the latter one is not that appealing of an option anymore is because, like I said, while you're outside of the friend zone, you take 10% maximum HP every second. So most of the time people like to stand right under him, and that's the best course of action typically, but I'll tell you why sometimes it may not be a very safe choice. The Sword Spike one, it's the same basic principle as his Black Blast. He essentially charges his sword and sets it on fire before he smashes the ground directly underneath him. Which means that unlike the first attack, this one you don't want to be directly underneath him, you want to get as far away as possible. Up until the 25% HP mark, it is possible to avoid this attack while staying inside his friend zone, so not the most threatening attack, but just be very careful about it. On the left and right sides of the map, you'll notice these pumps on the ground that occasionally spawn, and they release clouds of poison gas, and if you get hit by the poison gas, you don't take damage, but you just get stunned for 5 seconds. This is probably the most dangerous part of the boss fight. They don't do any damage by themselves, but they stun you for 5 seconds, and in Hard Magnus, if you're stunned for 5 seconds, you're pretty much dead. Think about it. You run into either a meteor falling directly on top of you, Magnus hitting you with one of his one-shot attacks, or you just simply dying from the dot damage and being unable to do anything about it because you can't move. I think if memory serves, you cannot lower the duration of this, which means it's always going to be a guaranteed 5 seconds. I'm not entirely sure, I haven't tested it out. It's not that difficult to avoid, but I'll explain why sometimes it might be a little bit later. Just a few notes about the boss. Hard Magnus, he's not hard to kill in terms of how much damage you need. He actually doesn't have that much HP, only about 120 billion. And while 120 billion may seem like a lot of HP, it's not really that much. If you do about, let's say, 40-30 mils per hit, you kill him pretty quickly. The only reason why it sounds a lot more difficult than it actually is purely because of the fact that Magnus is more about mechanics. He spends most of his time trying to knock you into meteors, trying to knock you into poison gases, or trying to like lock you in place so that he can kill you very quickly. meaning it's very difficult to find a good opportunity to attack him because the whole point of this boss fight is that you do not want to stand still. If you stand still, you're almost guaranteed to get hit by a meteor, so it's most important to learn how to dodge meteors plus Magnus's attacks. It can take a while to learn, but after a couple attempts it does become muscle memory and it does get a lot easier. It's just that I find that Magnus to be one of the most difficult bosses to learn. Just there's a lot to micromanage, a lot to look out for, and you just gotta keep yourself very aware of your surroundings. Magnus also tends to try to chain his abilities to kill you right away, whereas in, let's say, he would charge up his Black Blast with poison gas directly under him, which means that you can't stand under him, otherwise he'll get stunned, but you don't want to go into either of the sides because then he's just going to kill you, which means you have to run away. But if you run away, you might accidentally jump into a meteor, which will kill you. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. There's a lot of other combinations you have, but like if you actually start fighting the boss, you'll notice there that he tends to do a lot of chaining attacks where he will try to CC you first and then he'll blow you up instantly. It does get quite annoying, but I think after you get the hang of it, you should be able to work around it. I would say classes that had instant repositioning abilities like mages who have teleport, or Nightwalker's backstep, or maybe Blaster's bob and weave, they have a better advantage against this boss because of the fact that they can just quickly move right where they are. Classes that don't have a rush type skill like, Dual Blaze Tornado Spin or Demon Slayer's Dark Thrust, they tend to struggle a lot because you have to walk away from any attacks, and sometimes you may not be able to just because you're in the middle of attacking. Fortunately though, you do have 20 deaths, which means you can die 20 times before getting forced out, but if you're not very careful with it, and if you don't know how to dodge properly and use your mechanics to the best of your ability, you will lose those 20 lives very, very quickly. Avoid fighting Magnus on the left or right side of the map, as I said before, because the poison gas thing can be very, very difficult to deal with, so try to keep him in the middle as long as you can. Sometimes Magnus will dash to either the right or left side and you don't want to fight him in that spot, so if you can, try to survive as long as you can outside of the zone and wait for Magnus to dash back into the middle, but overall your main goal is to try to just keep Magnus in the center of the map. Once he's under 25% HP, you do notice that his friend zone gets extremely small, which means that it's almost impossible to dodge his Spin Slash or his Sword Spike attack without actually dying. So if your class is a bind, or if you're doing this with a friend and either of you guys has some form of immobilizing skill, that's the best time to use it, because when he gets under that point, you might as well just burst him as quickly as possible. It's best to use it when he's in the middle especially, so the only obstacles you have to watch are the meteors. Try not to bind him on either the left or right side, because then you also have to worry about the poison gas. But that pretty much covers it for Hard Magnus. He's not the most difficult boss in the game, he's just annoying. That's why a lot of people don't like dealing with him unless they can one-shot him. Just because there's too much to worry about. You take a boss like Chaos Vellum who does have falling stalagmites which stun you, but that's the only thing you have to deal with, and maybe his tails. It's just there's a lot of BS that Magnus has, and there's so many things that can go wrong in this boss fight that sometimes a lot of people just don't like doing it. He does have pretty valuable drops though. He drops flames like any boss does. He also drops cubes. He has a very high drop rate for cubes, and he drops two things. He can give you Tyrant Capes, which are currently, before 25-star update, the best cape in the game. He also drops Magnus coins, which you can trade in the downtown black market to get the other two Tyrant pieces, the Tyrant Boots and the Tyrant Belt. The gloves are not available in the shop, they're only available in Marvel Machine or in Critias, but if you can still get the other three Tyrant gear, that's a huge boost to your damage and range, so I do recommend getting them. Fortunately, Magnus coins are instants, which means that everyone gets their own amount of Magnus coins. You can get a maximum of 6 in one single run, and if you do struggle to kill this by yourself, you can always go in a party because you will always get the same 6 coins if you have a decent amount of drop rate. The capes unfortunately are not, which means you guys have to share them if you ever do want to grab one. But the coins, yeah, it doesn't matter how many party members you have. If you have 1, you're guaranteed 6. If you have 6, you're guaranteed 6 as long as you guys have good drop rate. Overall, it's pretty consistent loot, and if you ever do feel like you can't take him on by yourself, you can always go with a couple friends, and that makes bossing a lot more fun. But people tend to solo him just because he's not that hard to kill anymore, especially with Fit Job update and with node stones. I would say in terms of difficulty, he would be like a 7 out of 10, or more like a 6 out of 10 boss. I don't think he's that tough. He doesn't take much damage to deal with. In fact, you can probably kill him with less than 1 mil range. It's just that there's a lot of mechanics that you have to work with. He's very annoying, that's all I have to say about him. But yeah, alright, that covers it. I think this video got a lot longer than I expected it to be, but I just wanted to go as much into depth about the boss as I could. If you enjoyed though, please be sure to leave a like, and don't forget to request any bosses in the comment section below. I currently cannot do Hard Lotus or Hard Damien, or at least I never tried. It's probably the same basic principle as the normal Lotus and normal Damien, but I will probably redo those bosses as well. Anyways, that should be it. I will see you in the next video. Take care.